Thank you, General, for your remarks and for your commitment to this fight. I have been very proud in our presentations to the State Department to have a co-counsel who has 25 years of experience in international litigation and arbitration and settlement of disputes. Stephen is our last speaker today before I close this program. And there's probably no one more knowledgeable in the country on Camp Ashraf or the designation of the foreign terrorist organization who has served longer in this cause. Stephen Schneebaum is a lecturer of international human rights law at Johns Hopkins. He has served as counsel for the U.S. families of Camp Ashraf. He's traveled to Camp Ashraf on 2 occasions, recently as August 2008. I'm very proud to introduce you our co-counsel who has led the fight on this issue of the foreign terrorist designation and standing up for the residents of Camp Ashraf. Stephen?
Well, thank you, Senator. And before I begin my remarks, which could be subtitled, "And now a word from our lawyer," since I am the last speaker, I think it would be appropriate for me to indicate what a tremendous supporter of the PMOI and of Camp Ashraf we have had in Senator Bob Torricelli, who deserves all of our thanks. Now, my friends, I've been asked to do 2 things in my remarks today. One, to provide some legal context for some of what you've been hearing this morning, and the second is to update you on the state of play with respect to both the petition for delisting and also the condition of the good people at Camp Ashraf. With respect to the petition, the matter is fairly clear, but for those of you unfamiliar with the chronology, we filed our petition to delist the PMOI in the summer of 2008. The statutory framework gives the Department of State 180 days to come up with a decision, to decide on the petition. This was the first petition, I should tell you, the first petition ever submitted by an organization to be removed from the foreign terrorist organization list. Well, the department did, in fact, respond in 180 days. In fact, I think they beat the deadline by 2 or 3 days. In January of 2009, right before the Bush administration went out of office, Secretary Rice issued an opinion denying our petition, but at the same time recommending that her decision be revisited within 2 years. The decision was based entirely on classified information that we, as counsel to the PMOI, were not even permitted to see, much less to rebut. This was something right out of an old movie about the Soviet Union. And so we petitioned to, as the statute permits, to the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. And after briefing and oral argument, the court reversed the decision of the Secretary and remanded the petition to her, now to the new administration, to revisit the conclusions after having given the PMOI due process of law. Due process of law meant at least some understanding, at least some exposure to the information on the basis of which the department was apparently ready to conclude that PMOI remains a terrorist organization. And I should tell you, there's been much discussion about that this morning. The term terrorism and the term terrorist activity are defined by law. This is not some vague sense in which the word terrorism is shorthand for we don't like you or we don't like your politics. A terrorist organization is an organization engaged in such things as assassinations, bombings, hostage-taking, occupation of public spaces, this sort of thing. Violence, in short. And there has been no allegation, much less proof, of any such undertaking on the part of the PMOI since 2001 at the very latest, over 10 years ago. Well, the department again, after we resubmitted our petition at the end of 2010, the department again reviewed its records and provided to us redacted versions of the classified material on which it purports to rely. And as you heard earlier this morning, the information upon which they are purporting now to rely is simply silly. There is no way of dignifying what we have been shown. I'll give you an example. There was apparently an aborted hijacking of an Iranian aircraft that took place about a year and a half ago. The perpetrator was obviously someone who was mentally unbalanced and did not get away with the hijacking. When he was taken off the plane, the immediate report was that this was a mentally ill individual who was acting out some kind of fantasy. A day or two later, an Iranian regime spokesman attributed the hijacking to the PMOI. There was never any indication of this individual ever having heard of the PMOI. And indeed, the allegation didn't stick. It wasn't repeated even by the Iranian regime. Yet that document somehow found its way into the set of materials upon which the State Department now purports to base its opinion. Now, I'm not going to suggest that the State Department has found that document to be persuasive, but the mere fact that it's included tells us the extent to which the bottom of the barrel is being scraped. And as Judge Mukasey indicated a moment ago, it's very important to see the situation of the delisting and the situation at Ashraf as intimately linked. We heard Judge Poe talk earlier about his conversation with Prime Minister Maliki and his suggestion that the Congressional delegation visit Ashraf, which was rejected by the Iraqis. What Judge Poe did not tell you was that in informing the Congressional delegation that they were not permitted to go to Ashraf, Prime Minister Maliki was quoted in the press as having said, "This is a terrorist organization. You wouldn't let foreigners visit a terrorist organization in your country, would you?" In other words, Prime Minister Maliki was indicating explicitly that he finds support for the treatment of the people of Ashraf in the designation here in Washington of the PMOI as a foreign terrorist organization. And I suspect that it is precisely the same justification that sustains Ambassador Lawrence Butler, who was quoted extensively in this weekend's, on Saturday's, New York Times, as having repeated virtually every cliche, virtually every libel, virtually every old story about the PMOI that any of us have ever heard. Stories going back to the 1970s, stories suggesting that PMOI is a Marxist organization, stories suggesting that the intelligence provided by the People's Mujahideen organization, intelligence referred to favorably by no less than the President of the United States, in the opinion of Ambassador Butler, that intelligence is rubbish. In the opinion of Ambassador Butler, the supporters of the PMOI, such as Judge Mukasey, such as Ambassador Bolton, such as General Wesley Clark and others, all of those people are corrupt. They've been bought. Every cliche, every old libel that can be brought out. And that was reported in the New York Times on Saturday. And if you read that article, as I hope all of us did, you've got to be asking yourself, among other things, what was the source of this reporter's information? How did he get this material? He appears to have been at Ashraf when Ambassador Butler was saying, as Judge Mukasey mentioned a moment ago, if you want to talk to the United States, you have to come to me. How did he get the story? I'll tell you how he got the story. Ambassador Butler brought this reporter along with him to Ashraf last week and introduced him as a member of his diplomatic delegation. A violation of diplomatic ethics, a violation of journalistic ethics, but a demonstration of how some people in the State Department, some people in the executive branch of government will stop at nothing in order to carry out the objectives that we have known the Iranian regime to have maintained all these years. And this is very dangerous. It is very dangerous for the people of Ashraf because the message that is being sent is that Prime Minister Maliki can have his way, that the people of Ashraf will not be protected by the United States. They will not be protected by the United Nations. They will be abandoned. That's very dangerous. That feeling that acts of violence can be perpetrated at Ashraf with impunity is what led to the invasion of July of 2009. It's what led to the invasion on April 8th of this year. That has to stop. And that's why meetings like this are so important, because when the world hears about the support of Ashraf and the concern for Ashraf, not only of the distinguished members of the panel, but of members of the United States Congress, members from both parties, members from across the country, when the world hears that they are tying the support of Ashraf to the fundamental values that underlie this country's freedom, then we all are sending the message to Iraq and to Iran, to policymakers in this country, that we will not accept this kind of dismissal of these freedom fighters in Iraq. We will not be content until they are protected, until they are safe, until they are free. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for being here today and your time and your commitment, and to every member of the panel.
Thank you.
It is a basics of public speaking and debate that one never repeats an allegation that is baseless because you give it foundation. And I've stayed with that most of my life, as I think Stephen has. But the case he just made to you is so important. There is a legitimate debate here. We can debate the issue of the FTO and the future of Camp Ashraf and American relations with Iran. But I don't know anything that speaks more to the problem of legitimate discourse in American public policy than the repeating of these hollow charges and empty lies about the MEK, as witnessed by Saturday's story in the New York Times. I'll be brief, but it has to be said. If you have something to say about why the MEK should not be delisted, if there is a case for not protecting the people of Camp Ashraf where they are located, if there's a case to be made against the MEK on some basis in the interest of the United States, let's hear it. I'm sympathetic to the MEK, but I'm for the United States every day of the week. If this is not in American interest, make the case. But to repeat these ridiculous allegations, the MEK is not a Marxist organization. It simply is not. You can say it, you can keep writing it, you can repeat it all day long, but it is not Marxist. Mrs. Rajavi, in her speech in Rome, laid out the platform and the charter of the organization. It believes in free enterprise and human rights, denuclearization, peaceful relations with its neighbors, a democratic multi-party system. Now, you may not want to hear it because of the lack of any other evidence, just denying it may be your case, but it makes you look more ridiculous than right. To charge the MEK with being Marxist because in the 1970s some people came to leadership who had Marxist tendencies is like claiming the Democratic Party remained segregationist because of George Wallace. That was then, this is now. It's an organization that wants a democratic future for Iran, period. Second, to deny that there is no evidence of terrorist activity for many years and within the statutory period is to belie the facts. Now, you can say otherwise, but in recent months I have heard the director of the FBI, the director of the CIA, the director of anti-terrorism operations, the Attorney General of the United States, I have heard the most high-ranking officials in Democratic and Republican administrations to say otherwise. If you have evidence that they're all wrong, what an extraordinary coincidence that everyone in both parties for the last 15 years is wrong. But if you have evidence, it's time to come forward with it. But aren't you just tired of reading in the newspapers the same empty charges and nonsense again and again and again? Talk about an admission of nothing to say. Now, finally, I want to leave you with this. Some things are so simple. What is it the people of Camp Ashraf want? What are our demands? You know what they want? They want to live. They've been attacked twice. People are losing their lives. And if the problem is not solved, there's a very real chance by the end of this year, many more are going to lose their lives. Because policy is being dictated from Tehran, not Washington and not Baghdad. It is a real problem. But have we learned nothing in diplomacy? Acceding to the demands of the mullahs in Tehran accomplishes nothing. Of course they want the camp disbanded. Of course they want people moved. Of course they want the MEK disbanded. I understand that. But does anyone believe if you give them those things, if everyone in Ashraf is moved, if another 100 people are killed, if the organization is disbanded, if there is no opposition to the mullahs anywhere on this earth, does anyone believe that's the last Iranian demand? Do we accomplish anything by acceding to it other than encouraging more outrageous demands and compromising the rights of yet other peoples? There are many things that make me proud about the United States, but nothing more than the unique willingness of the United States government to stand with the small against the large, the weak against the strong, the poor against the rich. We have an enormously rich tradition of doing that. I understand the power of Iran. It's developing nuclear weapons. It has oil. It has money. It holds some of our citizens against all international law. I understand their leverage. But I also remember that tradition and the lessons we have learned about ever acceding to tyrants. I'm enormously pleased that you're all here today. It is very rare in your life that you can be involved in a cause and fighting for something that literally means someone's life. There are many good causes you can help, many things that you can advance, but rarely are you involved in something where someone's life is in your hands. With the people of Camp Ashraf, they're in your hands. Everyone here either works for a member of Congress or knows a member of Congress. Everyone's capable of writing to the State Department, being heard, talking to a journalist, correcting the record. I urge you to do so because time is late. I wish we had time to figure out what motivates Ambassador Butler. Frankly, it is beside me. I don't know. I don't know why journalists write these stories without researching the facts, but there isn't time to figure that out either. We have to win this before a lot of innocent people are hurt. And for that, we're all grateful that you are here and the members of our panel have lent their credibility and their knowledge and their voices. Thank you all very, very much.